And the first thing that I would like to talk about is, well, first of all, for the arrivals here, just call me Billy. Do not use my last name. I hate my last name. It's a tasty sandwich, but I hate my last name. Okay, so in order then, I've been doing this Zoom thing here the whole time during our little pandemic, and routinely come to recognize that the Academy's Zoom link doesn't work every week. And the IT people say, oh, just use a different browser. But if you just saw my resume, you can see that I'm spread my wings really far and wide. And I have Zoom links used for other browsers, for other schools, for San Francisco State, for Kenyatta. So on any given day, I'll usually come in. My office hours, if you need me, can be like 8:30. If you really need me, just use my Yahoo address. In the class here, I've added a series of links in the discussion. So here's our main Zoom link right here. This Pinterest link I'll explain in just a moment. But here's the alt Zoom link. So somewhere around 8:50 in the morning, if I can't get the Zoom link to work, if it pooters out on me, then I'll email the class right away just through the roster. You know, I'll just right through here, and I'll just say, hey, use the alt link because the Academy one doesn't work right now. This is just a notice about the office hours. If you need me, I can be in class 8:30 before class or by arrangement. And then in this email, or in this discussion window right here, is my Yahoo address. So just use billyb_44@yahoo.com. I do use my Academy email. It's fine. But I can see my Yahoo on my phone. I have not linked this one to my phone, so that one's faster. This is interesting. This is a little Pixie Dust. I'm sorry, this is where I want you to put your Pixie Dust animation for today.
Excuse me?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I cannot see anything on the share screen, so I only see your guys' faces. And
Did I not share my screen? Oh, I did not share my screen.
Yeah.
I thought I shared my screen. I'm sorry. How about that?
Yeah, now I can see it.
Okay, sorry. All right, so just really quickly, once again, here's the, I'll go over this Pinterest link. Here's my Zoom link. Here's my office hours with the Yahoo in there. This is the first place. This is where you'll put all your assignments right here in the discussion area. And in the discussion area, I will also post a recording of our Zoom class, which will be posted on YouTube. You know, I know that you can embed the movies into Zoom, but I just find it so much easier to just use YouTube, because then you can see the channel. All right, and then going down, we'll talk about this principles of animation here. There's a PDF in there, which you're welcome to grab. Here's the interesting little thing about the real life special effects. So someone was having a wedding or something, and they put all these Christmas lights up on top of a trellis. And then it rained and there was a puddle, and someone's taking a reflection of the raindrops hitting the puddle, showing the reflection of the lights. I always thought that was the most amazing thing. All right, and then this is a JPEG of sketches. Oh yeah, you can't see that. So, and we'll go over this, maybe not as much today, maybe starting next week, but I want you sketching out your ideas for the semester. And I'll explain this one just a little more fully here in a minute. All right. All right, so that's the discussion area. Once again, the Zoom links will be here. I'm sorry, the Zoom recordings will be here and you'll see those. And then every week that there's an assignment due, I will post that in here, like this one is our Pixie Dust assignment. It is not linked to the grade book, even though the Academy thinks it is, but it isn't. I keep those records manually with a piece of paper that I have here in my house. Okay, let me go through my introductions here. It's interesting to me that most of you are in animation. I think I got one person, two people in games, and then Liam,
Yes.
you are an MFA in game,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going well, and I am graduating this semester.
Yeah. Oh, you are.
Yeah.
This is one of your technical electives.
Yes.
Okay. And you are, what country are you from?
I was born and raised in China.
In China?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you're now living in San Francisco. I see the Golden Gate Bridge behind you.
Yeah, this is like a virtual background, but
Yeah, I know.
sorry about the backlight. The window's like right behind me.
Yeah, me too. Got this strange little highlight on my 5 head.
Okay.
Here, I'll move my hat down. There, it's a little better. Are you going to stay here in the city when you're done?
I will try. I will try to find a job here and stay.
Yeah, remember you have to do the proper paperwork
Mm-hmm.
before you graduate,
Okay.
right? Yeah. Some of my students forget and then they have to go back to their main country.
Okay.
And one of my students forgot way past graduation and she was banned from coming back for 10 years. So
Okay.
make sure you do your proper paperwork.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay. You're welcome. All right. And I see Millicent. Is that how you want us to call you?
Yes, it's pronounced Millicent.
Did I say it wrong?
No, you said it correctly.
Okay, Millicent. And do you have a nickname?
You can call me Millie if that would be easier.
Whatever you want.
Okay, Millicent would be fine.
Okay, perfect. And where are you from?
I'm from Washington State.
Washington State. Okay, nice to meet you. Joseph. Hello, Joseph.
Hi.
And is it okay to call you Joseph or do you want to be
Yeah.
Joe?
No, Joseph is fine.
Joseph is fine, okay. Where are you from?
I'm from Singapore. I'm currently in Singapore.
Okay. What time is it in Singapore?
Oh, it's a lovely 1:20 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
I'm sorry, you were messing with your microphone. I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. My connection is not that great. My mic cuts out sometimes. It's 1:20 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Okay, 1 a.m. So we'll be expedient here so that we can get you into your nap. All right, Min Jung, is that how you say your name?
Yes,
Okay, and where are you from?
I'm from South Korea.
South Korea. Do you have a camera?
Yeah, I have a camera.
Yeah, you're supposed to have it on. Academy rules.
So I turned on the camera, but my desktop doesn't have a camera, so I log in with my iPad and desktop.
All right, so remember, I can't give you attendance unless you have your camera on.
Okay.
So I'll give you a gift today, but you have to get a camera. Okay, South Korea. What time is it in South Korea? Oh, wait, where are you?
I'm living in San Francisco now.
You're in San Francisco, okay. Welcome, Dan.
Hi. So I'm from China, and
China.
I think that is the third year here for me. Yeah.
Okay. Did you say you're in China or you're from China, but you're in San Francisco?
I'm in San Francisco right now.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
We're missing Javon. John is one of our animation students. I don't know where he went. Okay, Rob.
Hey,
Hello, Rob. Where are you from?
just Bay Area, Livermore.
Nice. It's hot out there already, probably today, right?
Kind of, actually, yeah. It's been heating up the last couple of days, a little more than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's like 80 degrees yesterday in San Francisco, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with my coat? I actually went out for a walk at midnight last night. I was like, I didn't need my coat. That was strange. All right, Ryan, where are you from?
I'm from United States, California.
California. Okay. And help me with your name here. Is Zihan?
Yeah, you can just call me Zihan.
Zihan, okay. And where are you from?
I'm from China and I'm currently in Oakland.
In Oakland?
Yeah,
Oakland, California, okay.
yes.
Okay. All right, well, welcome to class, everybody. Welcome to class. It's funny that well, he's not the executive director of the game department anymore. He's got a new title. He got a raise. He got a promotion. But his name was David Goodwin. He was the executive director for the game department for many years. And he graduated the academy, I don't know, 15 years ago with a degree, a BFA in animation. Him and I know each other from Wild Brain. We've known each other for like 26 years or something. And he's really good at drawing. He's really good at animation. And when he graduated the academy with a BA in animation, he decided to work for game companies because, yeah, we have Pixar, we have ILM, we have Red Rock, we have all these, Tippett, we have all these world-class animation studios right here in the Bay Area, but there's no middle animation studios anymore. There's only a few of them, like GhostBot. There's only a few of them. And so because there's 150 game companies in the city, he decided to go the game route. And he learned Unity and Maya and all that fun stuff. And he took on the job of the executive director position at the academy and immediately said, hey, you know what? He noticed that in the game world, that one of the advantages that any of the disciplines in game had was drawing and animation. And so when he started this class, he looked at me and he knew that I have a background in special effects. The people that I worked with are all Disney people. At James and at Giant Peach, they were all Disney people. And the teachers that I had at the academy were all Disney people. So you're just 2 degrees of separation away from all the people that did the special effects on Pinocchio and all the movies going forward. So what I'm going to be giving you is like that technique, that approach, that process. Well, he saw that the sliders in Unity and the sliders in your game engines to create special effects for steam and fire and smoke and water and explosions and all that, they're okay, but that some of the effects artists in the games were not mishandling them, but just not looking at them frame by frame and seeing what the shapes were and what the aesthetics of those special effects were. And so he thought that it was an advantage to put a special effects class in the game department. And I routinely get all my animators. So it's funny. I've only got 3 game people and the rest of you are all animators, which is fine with me. I think that there is a shift. Almost every single game school is now working with their animation school to cross-reference game style animation or drawing for games or animation for games. All the schools that offer game degrees are doing this, almost every single one of them. And remember that in games, there are 5 main disciplines. The first one being modeling, the second one's texturing, the third one is rigging, lighting, and then animation. And animation for games is quite a bit different than traditional animation. We're not going to go into that too much. So that's the background of this class. So once again, remember that the background for this class in a nutshell is art and aesthetics and drawing. So we're going to push that heavily. We're going to push the ideas of animation along with it as well. All right, so I think I'm recording this, so let me share my screen with you again. In the class, in this discussion area right here, I have loaded up a Pinterest link for you. It's the second one down. So this is something that I started creating as soon as I was teaching this class, however many years ago. I'm the only one who's ever taught this class at the Academy. And so there's just so much good stuff in here. I mean, it's just loaded. There's hundreds and hundreds of images. Most of the stuff that we're going to be doing, I am not going to have you do a tornado that looks like this. I mean, that illustration's awesome, but this would terrify you to try to animate something like that. So there's lots of things that are inspirational. There's lots of things that are just really, really good reference. And remember, oh yeah, my daughter always yells at me because I think I'm saying Pinterest wrong, but I don't care. I really, it looks like it's supposed to be Pinterest because I always think it's interesting. All right, so you're pinning things that are interesting. So I don't care. We're going to start with Pixie Dust. Just a whole lot of really, really great stuff here. And remember that when you click on something, it'll give you all the stuff that's relevant to it. So let me just pause right here on this little Tinkerbell. And this is a really good thing for us to see today because we're going to start with Pixie Dust. And there was a GIF of this one. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So we're going to start with Pixie Dust. All right, so from our outline, you can see that we're going to review the principles of animation. There is a note in here that I think they wanted, the original author of the class was not my executive director. He was someone else. I believe it was actually one of my other students who works at the Academy, and just kind of wrote this as what they thought might be appropriate for games. I do not want to spend forever reviewing the principles of animation. We'll do it quickly and then we'll get on. Next week, we'll talk about hierarchies, grouping, libraries, whatever. I don't want to spend 2 weeks talking about this. We're going to do Pixie Dust first, which kind of covers this little dust animation here in week 3. And then the relative thing here is that you see smoke in module 3, you see tornadoes in module 4, you see explosions in module 5, laser and gun blasts, plasma, jets in module 6, you see bubbles in week 7, eruptions or volcano in week 8, water in week 9, lava, orbs, glass, and then your final. So what I thought when I first taught this class was that, well, I've always started with Pixie Dust because it's fun, it's easy, it just takes a bunch of time. You'll see here in just a minute. So what I thought that would be more interesting is that the spring show always comes around, and I believe the spring show this year is in person. They may do an online video of it, but I was told in my meeting last week that it is going to be in person in San Francisco. And so when we get through this first module here for Pixie Dust, I will encourage you all to submit for the spring show. And maybe even the next one. But I noticed maybe the second semester that I taught this class that instead of doing like 10 or 12 different standalone projects, that we combine them. And so I think I actually have a flag animation in here, which is not on the outline for our class. But there's so many things about this flag animation that play into what we do for fire, for water, for anything that's cycling in animation as a wave. So I introduce you to this flag animation. We'll probably do that next week. Here in this little sketch, I have an orb, a summoning orb or a beam. And then in the next sketch down here, I have a volcano. And the volcano has eruptions and smoke and fire and a water splash. And because of this volcano project, I decided to combine the effects. Instead of combining the effects at the final for this class, we're combining the special effects for the volcano, and definitely the tornado can have lightning in there. So there's only a couple of combined effects in this drawing numbers of, I have it out of order, but drawing number 5. And then because the idea of breaking glass and orbs and explosions, it kind of lends itself to a chemistry lab for your final. So this is something that I'm going to want you to do as we go along here all throughout our outline. And what I did is I have a piece of graph paper here. It's just one of those things where each one of the squares is a 1/4 inch. So 4 squares is an inch. And it just so happens that 4 by 7 is very close to the ratio of the screen that we use. So if you just take 7 divided by 4, that equals 1.75. And so so that's really, really, really close to what we use is 16 by 9 ratio. So 16 divided by 9. So this is the HD ratio, 1.777. So when we do our projects, you can use 1080, I'm sorry, 1920 divided by 1080, which is 1.777. So that's the HD screen ratio. And so you could do 1280 by, 1280 by 720, and that's the same exact ratio. You all understand what I was doing right there? Does anyone have any questions about that? I want you using 16 by 9 ratio, and 16 by 9 ratio is 1.777. So when you do these sketches, when you do your thumbnails, if they're 7 by 4, 4 by 7, it comes out to 1.75, which is close enough for the idea of your sketches. So when you go through your module here, you can see all the things that we're supposed to do for the class, and you're in animation. Most of you should be doing thumbnails. How are you going to handle your pixie dust? What do you want to do for your flag? What do you want to do for your orb? How do you want to compose the shot for your volcano? What do you want to do? And so combine this list right here with what's going on in the Pinterest, combine all of whatever shots that you want in here in your sketches, and you can do things out of order if you want. But I do encourage you to follow along with us. The volcano is a big one. I usually try to hit the volcano at or around midterm. And so you can definitely submit the pixie dust and the volcano for the spring show, right? So the idea is art, aesthetics, drawing, animation, and we're off and running. All right, let me check my list to make sure I'm going in the correct order. Okay. All right, so let's talk about our principles of animation sheet. This is in your class already. The principles of animation were written by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson and published in 1981. Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson were illustrators at Chouinard University, and they started at the Disney studios in the late 20s, early 30s. I think they were one of the principal animators on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it really, at that point, Disney was looking for more of an illusion of life style of animation, rather than the rubber hose style animation that was happening in animation, or animation that was really, really cartoony. He wanted things that were very realistic. He wanted the people to move correctly. He wanted animals to move like animals. He was not interested in the rubber hose or Mickey Mouse style of animation for Snow White or the Hunter or the Queen. So those two, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, basically created the illusion of life. They went into Disney as illustrators and really combined with all their talents and all the other men and women on the campus, basically created over their whole career, created the illusion of life. When they wrote the illusion of life in 1981, the principles, there was 12 principles, and on this list, those original 12 are listed in parentheses here, and they are out of order because I think that when they published the book, they didn't really think about it in terms of a direct process or a learning tool. And the Principles of Animation is a great book, or the Illusion of Life is a great book, but it's not really a good textbook. You animators all know that the best textbook for animation is Richard Williams' Survival Kit. That is the best animation text out there. Everything else is okay and good, and you get a lot out of the Timing for Animation book, and the Ron White book is good, and the Preston Blair book is excellent. You know, that Preston Blair book is always going to be with me. But the Illusion of Life was basically just a theory and art, a coffee table book, and it was beautiful. So when I teach animation, I rearrange them so that the first principle of animation should be the illusion of life. And then there are a whole bunch of principles of animation that go and define movement and dynamics. And then the idea of appeal is really a story thing. It's about the character design and who that character is, and acting. You know, we always talk about acting. Acting should be a huge principle of animation. Weight should be a huge principle. Every single animator that I've ever had as a teacher has always talked about weight. Why was weight never an original principle? It just lose my mind thinking about it. The idea of art should be a principle of animation. So I rearrange this so that it's easier to understand where those principles of animation fall. Camera, you're staging something, you're putting things into a stage, you are mise en scene, you are creating, you are the director, you are the auteur, you are creating a world. And so staging is really not a motion dynamic, it's a camera thing. It's what the camera sees. In animation, everything starts and ends with the camera. Exaggeration should be its own principle, its own category, because you can exaggerate a lot of things. You can exaggerate squash and stretch. You can exaggerate anticipation. You can exaggerate timing and spacing. You can exaggerate all of these. So it's important for you and me to understand that exaggeration is on one end of the spectrum, it's very live action oriented, almost rotoscope looking. And then there's no exaggeration and rotoscoping at all. But then you keep adding the dial for squash and stretch, and then you're going to become a lot more cartoony. Then all of a sudden, exaggeration itself becomes a stylistic thing. And style here in art really could be applied to all of these. What is your style as an animator of handling weight? What is your style of handling timing? And when animators go out looking for jobs, that is the principal thing that studios look for in your reel. How do you handle timing and weight? That is the first thing that they look for in new animators. What is your process? Are you animating pose to pose? Are you animating straight ahead? Or are you cheating? Are you using rotoscope or any form of rotoscope? So process, the way you get your animation should be in its own little category there. All right, and then because I arranged this as an animation teacher, oh yeah, my Adobe Acrobat is working really slowly. Come on, wake up here. That you go out there online and you look at the principles of animation, and every animation teacher's got their own way of doing it. And so I just put this up there to remind you that this guy from Angry Animator has 21 principles of animation. I didn't even number mine, but you can see that all of a sudden he's talking about silhouette and leading action or acting or breaking of joints, accents. So he's adding in a whole bunch of stuff in here. The idea of either animating straight ahead or versus pose to pose, or keys and breakdowns, you know. So this is for you to just have and look at. And we're going to talk about little bits and pieces of this for every project that we do. All right, let me pause for just a second. Does anyone have any questions, comments, complaints, conundrums? Okay. All right, so we're going to do a couple of different things here. You may have gotten wind of this. I know students talk. The school, and I think that this was an interesting thing here. We're going to do most of our work, or I'm going to do my demos in Toon Boom. And so you're all in animation. You know that Toon Boom is available to the students at the Academy for free. So I'm just going to go down my list here, and I want to make sure that I'm on the same page with all of you. So Millicent, which application are you using?
I have Procreate right now.
Procreate, okay. Joseph?
I'm using Toon Boom.
Toon Boom, okay. Liam?
Oh, I'm using Procreate.
Procreate. Minjung?
I'm using Procreate.
Procreate. Dan?
I'm using Toon Boom.
Toon Boom. Javon is not here. Rob?
I could use either one. I got Toon Boom, Procreate, Photoshop, and whichever one.
I prefer Toon Boom. Okay, Ryan?
I don't think I got either of those, but you said that what was free?
You know what? I'll do like a 2-minute little thing for you. So pay attention to the next thing I talk about. Zihan?
I'm using Procreate.
Procreate, okay. All right, so that gives me a good place to start because I am going to do my demos in Toon Boom. Toon Boom is an extremely complicated application. If you've used it, you know it. But I'm only going to do part of it. I'm going to use Toon Boom as just an animation shell. Right now, you can embed Maya files inside Toon Boom. You can embed Photoshop files inside the Toon Boom folder. They live there. But what I'll do is I'll do the introduction today for an application called Rough Animator. So Brian, pay attention to that little part. And when I do my demos in Toon Boom, it'll be for all of you who are either using Toon Boom or Procreate to just kind of, hey, Toon Boom isn't really that scary of an application. And what I'm looking for is the art and the effects and the animation in the end anyway. So, all right, so the first thing that I would like to do here is just do a quick little demo on an application called Rough Animator. So this is what the splash screen looks like. Ryan, if you, I'm sorry, or any of you, the animators out there would find it very interesting. This application came to me because I work at Kenyatta College through the director of the animation department there. And it is like the cheapest application out there. It's available for Apple or PC or for iPads or Androids. You could even animate on your phone with this. It costs $5 across the board. It's an extremely easy application to understand and learn. So this is Rough Animator. Basically, you start a new project and you say 24 FPS, 1280 by 720. That is the default. It's fine. It's 16:9 ratio and just say okay. And this is everything. This is the entire application. Under the window tab, you've got tools, tool options, timeline, preferences, and a color palette. That's it. It's a really, really simple application. Ryan, you can use this if you want, but remember that you are, you do have Toon Boom available to you from the Academy. This is great. In order to create a background, you just draw on the background, whatever you want to do. In order to create a layer, you just say, hey, I want to create a new layer. I want to create a new layer. Let's say that you want to take this first layer here and just call it a layout layer. And you want to do just a rough of your layout so that you can place your staging correctly. And that when you're drawing in this layer, if you want to increase the duration of time of your entire shot, all you do is you click.
Did you share the screen?
What's that?
Did you share the screen?
We can't see what you're doing.
Oh, did I not share my screen again? You guys have to stop me. All right, so let me go backwards for just a second. So this is Rough Animator. It's $5. It's really a great, wonderful little tool. And in Rough Animator, let me quit it and start it back again. So this is your splash screen to just say new project. It comes in at 24 FPS, 1280 by 720 is your default 16:9 ratio. You just say, okay. This is your entire application. In your window tablet, you got tools, options, timeline, preferences, and color palette. That's it. That's the entire program. So like right here, here's your layers. So if you want to add a new layer, you just add a new layer over here, add as many as you want. Here in this layer, we're just going to call this a layout layer. And we're going to draw in the layout layer by clicking here. And if you want to have your layout extend to the entire duration of the shot, the background comes along with it. So that's it. That's like the easiest thing to understand about how this application works. If you want to draw on layer 2, let's say that this is your rough layer, you're just going to call it R, and you want it to be on 2s. So you should all know what on 2s means. So you just call that on 2s, and when you say add a drawing after, it comes in on 2s. So now you can create your entire shot on 2s. If this was on 3s and you were drawing some anime style, then the next frames are going to come in as on 3s. You can edit multiple frames. You just have some tools up here. I believe the PC people actually have a geometry and a line tool that's in here. I have a Mac, so I just have that a limited thing here. You have a very simple color palette, and the swatches, you can just drag this color right into the color swatch, and then you've got it. You can delete them. Your tool options are right here. Your preference, this is it. This is the entire application. One of the things that's really nice about this application is that, let's just say you're working in a rough animator tool. You've got a brush. And I don't know if the PC people have a pencil. It's basically the same thing. The pressure sensitivity is one of the best pressure sensitivity algorithms I've ever seen. I'm just drawing very lightly here, you know, and it responds really well. And then you can kind of really think about what your rough is looking like, and then cut into it and really darken it up. This is like one of the most responsive pressure sensitivity tools out there. It's really, really nice. All right, so you've got brush size, opacity, flow. There's all kinds of things. This is really nice. So Ryan, if you want, it's $5. It's easy to use. You should all have some sort of digital stylus. You should all have some sort of Wacom tablet or digital stylus pad. All right, everybody okay? Ryan, I would, you know, this is cheap, and the whole team, the whole rough animator team, there's like 2 people who work there. And so if you ever have trouble with it, you can just contact this Jacob guy and he'll respond right away. It's a good tool, and you animators should have it, just because sometimes it's fun to just pretend you have paper, you know? It's like, it's a good application. All right, so now let's just talk about Toon Boom. But you know what? I think that what I would like to do before I start talking about Toon Boom is, because we're gonna roll straight into the Pixie Dust thing here. And a lot of you are using Procreate anyway. So let's take our 10-minute break. We're gonna start our Pixie Dust demonstration here right at 10 o'clock, right? So everyone take a 10-minute break and come back right at 10 o'clock, okay?
Sounds good.
I'm gonna pause my screen. I'm gonna pause the Zoom recording, screen share. Hey, I'm sharing my screen. How about that? All right, so the one thing that I wanted to do was just kind of talk about references. When we do our Pixie Dust, this is wonderful. You know, Tinkerbell has a lot of Pixie Dust right there. And this is what we're doing. We're not going to do that much per frame. You know, those animators in 1949, 1950, 1951 spent forever drawing that with pencil on paper, and then the ink and paint department had to transfer every single graphite dot onto a cell with white paint and photograph it against a dark background. You know, it's labor intensive. The idea of the animation itself is not that complicated, but it just takes a bunch of time. So let me show you some examples. This is my 225 class. All right, these are my own files here. Here we go. All right, so in this folder here, what I'm just going to do is show you a bunch of things, and we're going to do a couple of things at once. We're going to juggle a couple of things at once. The first thing we're going to juggle is this. I want you starting to think about how you're going to combine your projects. And we're going to do, show you examples of these. All right, so let me pick the ones that are good. All right. This student, I believe, lied to me. This looks like he was doing procedural animation in Unity. I do not think he hand drew every single thing right there. If he did, I think he might have used a particle brush. I mean, it's really wonderful. It's really great. I didn't have time to go in there and argue with him. But it is one of the better Pixie Dust. Now I want to stop this and go right about here. And I can see that there's like repetitive shapes right here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's just a giveaway for using like a procedural brush. You see these little staccato areas right there? And I can see that there's little hiccups in it. There's like little spaces. So, and I don't think that that's bad. I think that he had gone in and maybe done the original in Unity and then created a QuickTime movie and then brought the QuickTime movie into Toon Boom and then just added some stuff on top of it. But it's pretty good. And it is correct. The thing that we're going to talk about today is how the Pixie Dust needs to fall, how the Pixie Dust is magic in the air and it just needs to fall. And so one of the dead giveaways for me that it's procedural is that each one of these dots is falling and decaying. And usually when you're doing this by hand, you get more of a sparkly effect because each one of the dots here is continuing to fall, which is awesome. But if you look at Tinkerbell, not every single dot follows frame by frame, and that causes the pixie dust to twinkle. So, I mean, that's really great. It's wonderful. It's a great place to start. Let's take a look at some other ones. All right, so this is pretty typical of the result from this class. I accused this student of the swarm, the cloud of pixie dust behind the orb looking like an octopus. And it does, and now you can't not see that. The steps in the process that we're going to use today used this, she used the process correctly, but I believe that she didn't eradicate or lose the idea of that thing looking like an octopus. All right, so this is an interesting one. It's obviously in the wrong screen ratio. All right, this is my 20 folder. Let me go to Calvin, desktop 225. It's the thumbnails. All right, let me just get a couple more here. All right, so this is an interesting one. This student didn't follow all the rules. The cloud, the volume is starting to work, but there's no pixie dust. You know, I think that this might have just been a first pass or something like that. But in that one, it's interesting, but there's actually no pixie dust. All right, let's try to find one more. That's the same one. We already saw that one, okay. All right, so this one is a good one to look at. It's got the cloud, but there's no pixie dust in it either. All right, so I think we're in a good place to start. Just our pixie dust. But before we do that, let's take a look at what some of the other ones here were. So again, we're combining to do a volcano. When I do this, can you see this? Rob, can you see my screen? Can you see the volcano?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So this one, the student has two different kinds of smoke. They have lava, they have fire, they have bubbles, they have water splash. There's like six effects in this midterm project. And it's pretty good. The lightning needs a little work, but that's pretty good. Here's a final. Again, with this final, it does not technically loop. It's more cinematic. And so there's smoke and lava and fire and water splashing and lightning. Here's another volcano. And this is a good place to start just really thinking about what your midterm project's going to look like. How are you going to compose this shot? How are you going to stage all of this? What's in the background? What's in the midground? What's in the foreground? What do you want your smoke to look like? There's a couple of different kinds of smoke. There's clouds moving in the background. There's lava. There's fire. There's a water splash. There's lots of things to look at in your midterm project. This is a tornado. It loops. It's not the very best one that I've ever seen. The lightning is kind of weird. Projectiles, smoke. It's kind of short. The duration is only 3 seconds. Usually this volcano will take you 8 or 10 seconds. No, I think, do we see that one? Okay. They all start to look the same. This is a final. Student, I think, rushed the orb a little bit, but you can see that they've got the orb, they've got the breaking glass, they've got an explosion, they've got vapor, they've got fire. There's all kinds of things in this particular final. Lightning. I think the orb could use just a little bit of work, but it's pretty interesting. That's what a final looks like. And we'll continue to look at some of these examples as our semester goes on here. Again, smoke, lava, fire, water, bubbles. Just kind of makes sense to make 5 combinations there for your midterm. Here's what the flag looks like. We'll do that starting next week. Maybe we might start that at week 3. That one's not that great. It is working, but it's not the best flag I've ever seen. Here's a chemistry lab for the final. It's okay. It's not the best one I've ever seen, but it's okay. It's okay. How to start the smoke. That's just a beginning of a smoke. Here's a good pixie dust. This is a perfect place to stop our little examples. Let's take a look at that one again. There's a lot of pixie dust work in here, just a ton of it. This was hand done, it was hand drawn. This was not procedural. There was no cheating. This was not done in Unity. Okay, that's a good place to start. All right, so once again, we're gonna just talk about Toon Boom just a little bit. Most of you are working in Procreate, so I'm not gonna dwell on this too much. Toon Boom, new scene, create, it should be shot. In the whole world of animation and film, cinema, you are not really creating a scene. It should be shot, whatever, get over it, Billy. So I'm just gonna say this is gonna be BB, and this is how I want your file names to be, everybody. You have to have a very short file name, so just use your initials, BB _ Pixie Dust _ version 1. That's it. 8 characters or less if you can get away with it. So you can see that all of these students were mostly behaving themselves. Janeska did not need to use her full name. Most of them were behaving themselves. Just your initials, and then give yourself something. It's a pixie dust. It's a chemistry lab. It's a volcano. It's a water splash. L for lightning, version 1, desktop. In Toon Boom, if you, oops, I just went that back. It starts out at 1080p, which is 1280 by 720. But if you just change this to 720/24, this comes in at 1280 by 720. You pick. You can work at 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720, it's fine. All right, and then you're at 24 FPS right now. I always recommend my animators to stay with 24 until they get really, really comfortable with 24 FPS, because games will use 30 FPS and their engines will upconvert to 60 FPS. And you are not animating at 60 FPS. You'll be animating at 30 FPS. But understanding the difference between 24 and 30 FPS, it's very nuanced. It's very difficult to just change back and forth, even like once a week, for the idea of timing of 24 to 30 FPS. So stay with 24 until you really get really good at timing. All right, so this is going to the desktop. I'm going to say open, and you get your project. Oh, hold on a second. Create the scene. Come on, Toon Boom, wake up. All right, so for those of you who are using Toon Boom, I just have a couple of preferences for you. I like working in the swatch mode as a preference, as opposed to this mode. It's just too cumbersome. It's really hard to read. So I always use the swatch mode. And when I'm using the swatch mode and making a new color, just saying adding a new color, I always make the color name really short too. So, and this is one of my favorite things about Toon Boom, is the multiple wheel mode. And this is just crazy. But the people who created Toon Boom should be, well, they did win the Windsor Academy Award from ASIFA a number of years ago. But this is just the most wonderful color picker I've ever seen in my whole life. This is just crazy good. All right, so we're gonna start with Pixie Dust. That's just gonna be really bright white color. It doesn't have to be pure white, but we're just gonna call this dust. Keep your file names, your layer names, your color names short. Here's your RGB values. 255 over 255 over 255 is white. 000 is black, and so now you're starting to learn the matrix. And I'm just going to put this away. So that's my dust. Your middle mouse on your keyboard, or on your mouse, is also your zoom tool. In Toon Boom, the 1 and 2 keys on the keyboard are also zoom tools, but you have to be in the stage in order for that to work. So the little red line tells you you're in the stage. All right, in your timeline, nothing works in Toon Boom until you create a color card. And then remember that if your drawing layer is selected when you create a color card, that'll be nested under, oh, you know what? They might have changed that. Yeah, they had enough people complaining about it that now the color card lives by itself, which is what you want. Before it became nested under the drawing. So I just put the color card on the bottom, and here's our drawing layer. I'm going to double click on this and just call it the BG. And we're going to just take a rectangle tool. And this is starting your preference, whatever application you're using in, what you're using. You can start with black. You can certainly just paint this puppy black for your whole stage. Or you can use dark blue or dark purple. From our sheet here, you can see that even in my thumbnail, I've suggested that you can create a background, a very simple background. Horizon is at the 4th mark here. And I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe this was a city. Maybe this was a graveyard. I would not go too heavy into the illustration part of your background. In one of the first couple of semesters that I taught this class, I had students start the Pixie Dust either really big and coming into the camera and then disappearing into the perspective distance, or the opposite, where the Pixie Dust starts in the distance and comes up into the camera, and it just gets too cumbersome. It just takes way too much time. Just have the Pixie Dust come in on an arc. And this is a good arc right here. The arc here has a loop and a couple of left and right turns, and that is good. So this is a nice complication here. You'll see that, or you saw in the other ones that it's also a good idea to have the pixie dust go off the screen, because then it ends the shot. Here, the pixie dust just might go behind a gravestone or a headstone or something, or behind a building, whatever. You can do that too if you want. All right, so in Toon Boom, we've got a couple of things to think about here. This is our timeline. I like working with the default workspace, just because it keeps everything normal. I am a bad person because I always work in the camera view as opposed to the drawing view, because I need to know where the edge of my stage is. I always need to know where my stage is. So, oops, hold on. So yeah, I need to know that my painted background is outside the edge. If you're doing in the drawing mode, that goes away. So yeah, I don't like that. I always work in the camera mode. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is maybe create a rough. So I'm just going to do a drawing layer, and this drawing layer I'm just going to call arc. I'm going to call it my arc layer. Everything in Toon Boom should be a vector. That's one of the big advantages of working in Toon Boom, is that you have SVG, scalable vector graphics, and keeping it vector is a huge advantage. So I'm going to add and close this, and on my arc layer then, on my background, this shot here is probably going to be 120 frames is just 4 seconds. I'm sorry, 5 seconds. You know, that's okay. I'm going to take this out to 170. I'm going to squish this down just a little bit. So in the timeline view, if you hit the 1 key on the keyboard, you can zoom out of your timeline. So we're going to take this up to just a 240, just to leave it at 10 seconds just for right now. For our background, we'll come up to the 5-second mark and hit F5 on the keyboard. That extends my black background, and they're borrowing from Flash. Many of the keyboard shortcuts in the default mode are borrowed from Flash, which is now Adobe Animate. It's still Adobe Animate, but when you create a file in Adobe Animate, it still comes in as an FLA. Okay, so on my arc, so this is technically going to be my layout, but I like using the arc because it's a smaller name. I'm just going to use my pencil. I'm going to use a blue. I'm going to use a blue color that is dedicated to the arc layer. So I always do this. If I'm drawing on a layer and I try to use the name of that layer exactly the same as the color. All right, so I'm going to pick a bright blue. And this is one of the advantages of working in Toon Boom as opposed to any other application. Because if I look at this arc right here and I go, okay, I'm going to bring my pixie dust in, I want to loop over, I want it to come up and go like this, maybe loop over one more time and go out. You know, that's a decent arc. This arc layer, if I double click, well, when you're in the swatch mode, you have to double click on this blue box in order to get back to the multi-wheel mode. So whenever, if I wanted to change this to something brighter, let's say, this changes the appearance of this color everywhere I've used it in this shot. So if you just draw your pixie dust white on black, and then at the last minute you want that pixie dust to be a different color, you just double click on the blue and say, hey, you know what? This white, quote unquote, white color, you wanted it to be brighter or darker or have some sort of tint or shade in it, then it changes it for every single instance of every single pixel everywhere in the entire shot. And you can't do that in Procreate or Psy or any of the other applications. This is a huge advantage of working in Toon Boom. It's just this color selector. All right, so here's my arc. On this arc layer, if I wanted to redo this, I'm just gonna select this and kill it. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna use my arc color, my pencil. And I'm just gonna make this just a little broader of a loop, a little bigger, a little smaller here, and I'm gonna have it go off the screen. The analysis here is that these two loops are the same. So I'm gonna Z, and I'm gonna look at this again. I like this little oval shape right here. So I'm gonna bring this in, and come up, go in here. Maybe I'm gonna have it hover right here and then just go off the screen. I'm not convinced that I like this little shape here. It's kind of like a nose. Let's do it again. Now it could be done, we could just use this one. It's got one loop. Whenever you have a loop, there is a consideration to make about how much pixie dust falls when it does the loop. You know, this is okay. It's kind of squeezed right there. This little thing, this little change in direction here is not as ideal as it could be. So let's do it one more time. Let's just get ourselves a nice oval. Take up your screen. Off the screen. So we'll just use this one. This one is okay. If you want, and because this is just your arc layer, you can always tweak this a little bit. You can always just say, you know, I'm gonna bring this out a little more. And then you can just see if nope, it's not gonna do it. So just use your erasing tool and just remind yourself that you're gonna use this one. This is just the arc anyway. All right, so this is important right now. So we're going to zoom in on this and we're going to look at this in terms of timing. And I highly recommend you doing this. So we're going to use our pencil and we're going to say, remind yourself on the arc layer that you want 8 frames of nothing. You don't want your animation to start as soon as you play. If you were looking at these and you looked at any one of the Pixie Dust tiers, you should see my students behaving themselves with their cinematics. So here, there was like 16 frames of nothing before this one started. You know, and I think I accused this student of having too much of like a tail or a flag or a ribbon behind the pixie dust, behind the orb. There's some good stuff happening, but you don't want the cloud of pixie dust that follows the orb to look like it's a piece of fabric. You want it to be magic. So I would recommend either 8 frames or 16 frame hold at the beginning of your shot. And this is a cinematic thing. It's really important. As your QuickTime movie is sitting on your desktop, you should not see the first pixie dust. You should not see the first orb. 8 frames is 1/3 of a second at 24 FPS. 16 frames is 2/3 of a second. And so those are beats. 8 frames is a beat in animation. You animators should know that. So 8 frames is a beat, 16 frames is 2 beats. So what we're going to do with our pencil here is just give ourselves timing. So we want our orb to come in at a regular rate. It is not going to speed up or slow down until it gets to places where we want to control it. So right now we're just going to bring in the orb at a regular rate. Maybe if you wanted to speed it up a little bit right here, you could. If you're going to do that, maybe you want to slow it down just a little bit when it goes around this corner. And then go ahead and go back to your regular timing here. This is a big loop right here, so you might want to speed it up a little bit. So spacing out the orb a little bit when it comes right in front of the camera might be a good idea. Slow it down as it goes around this corner. It's not like it's going into perspective. You're just giving it a place to kind of look at. All right, and then go back to your regular timing. And you're definitely going to want to slow it around this corner. And speed it up. So one thing to consider here is that it might be kind of fun to hold right here. So let's get it to hold like right here. So I'm going to make a little mark right here where it's going to hold for just a second. Just really space those drawings really close together. And then as it speeds up, goes around the corner, and then it can jet off the screen. It can just totally zoom off the screen. So I get a variety of timing and spacing here. It comes in at a regular rate, speeds up, slows down, holds. On the arc layer, you can make a mark with this an H to remind yourself that it's going to hold. And then it's going to speed off. Okay, so we have no idea what this is going to look like, but we do want our arc to last for the entire duration of the shot. So we're going to hold that to F5, and we're going to create a new layer. And this is just going to be our orb. So I'm going to call this ORB. And not to be confusing with the orb project that we're going to have in our final, or even if you wanted to do a standalone orb, it's easier to just to keep your file and your layer names as short as possible. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to either create an ellipse or we're going to draw an orb, but we want an orb color. So we're going to, and when you do this in Toon Boom, this creates a new color based on the one that was just selected. So we want our orb to be a different white. And this is going to be orb. Remember, keep your file or your layer name and your color name the same, that it's not confusing. All right, so what we're going to do here is we want a 16 frame delay. So on frame 16, we're going to start our orb. And I'm just going to draw a little circle right here. And it doesn't matter. I think that it's better if it's hand drawn as opposed to the geometry tool. We're going to select this. Remember that in Toon Boom, all you have to do is score through it to select it. And then I'm going to, remember my keyboard shortcuts here, I'm going to navigate out 2 frames. I'm going to have this on 2s and I'm going to paste. So once again, let me explain what I did right there. I drew this orb and I copied it. And then in my timeline, well, actually the stage is selected right now. I just use the greater than sign and the less than sign, which are right next to the M on the keyboard, to move out 2 frames. And then I pasted the drawing that I just copied, and it filled in this missing frame right here. So this drawing, I want to grab it and move it right onto the here, and I'm going to copy it, because then I'm going to go 2 frames out, paste it, and then move it. And remember to make sure that you're not grabbing the pivot point or that you're not rotating it. You're just going to copy and paste your center of the orb on top of each one of these timing ticks all throughout this arc. So let me just do that right now. All right, copy this, 2 frames out, paste, and move. Copy, 2 frames out, paste. And you want to do this fast. Copy, 2 frames out, paste. Copy. You want to do this fast for a couple of reasons. You want to do this fast so that, oops, I'm moving the pivot point. Paste. So that you can figure out the timing of your center before you get into any of the special effects. All right, see, it's kind of hard to talk and do this at the same time. You see that if you do it this way, the mouse and the selection of the object remain in the same place. So it's actually helps your process speed up a little bit. You don't have to worry about hovering to select. All right, now I'm going to move this and zoom out just a little bit. Copy, oh, copy, 2 frames out, paste. All right, so right about, oops, hold on. So right about here, stop it. Sorry, I deselected it and it's confusing my eyes. So right about here, I'm noticing that I've got 20 or 30 more positions to go through. So I'm going to select one of the frames in the arc layer, and I'm just going to hit plus on the keyboard, which is way off to the right side of my keyboard, not the plus that's above, like by the letter P. And I'm just going to increase the duration, maybe out to frame. I'll just take it all the way out to 240, which is 10 seconds. And then for the background, remember that you could do the same exact thing by just hitting the background and hitting F5, which extends that. So now I've got a full 10 seconds. I'm on this shot right here. This guy is right here. I'm going to select him. I'm going to copy it again. And I'm going to go 2 frames out, paste. Zoom in a little bit. Copy, 2 frames out, paste. Well, I think I might have made a mistake. I'm going to go here. All right, so this one's in the wrong place. Let me make sure by using the F and G keys. F goes backwards for keyframes and G goes forwards. All right, so now I'm on this frame, which is fine. I'm going to reselect this, copy it. 2 frames out, paste. This is where it was speeding up. Copy, 2 frames out, paste. Copy. All right, I think that it's important for you all to just get a real good feeling for how long this step in the process takes. You're not really doing anything except making sure that the timing and spacing are going to be correct. There are a couple of things to think about. And the first thing that you want to think about is that my stage is 1280 by 720. And so if it was any bigger than this, if I was using 1920 by 1080 and I drew this, then I would have almost twice as much work to do because it's a bigger screen. So I like the 1280 by 720 because it's vector and you can rescale it if you need to. But the timing at 1280 by 720 is good. Copy, 2 frames out, paste. Copy. All right, so here we're coming into the place where we want it to hold. So instead of actually holding, what we're going to be doing is called a moving hold. And so I'm just going to nudge it just a little bit. In fact, you can try something different if you want. You can have your little orb go back and forth. I think that, you can have it wiggle left and right. I wouldn't do this too much because the pixie dust is like a hose of water. The pixie dust is going to be coming off of this little orb. And if you shake it back and forth, left and right too much, you're gonna hate yourself because you're gonna end up having to draw so many little pieces of pixie dust. You're gonna just hate yourself. So I'm just gonna slow it down right there, and I'm gonna speed it up again. I'm gonna give another frame there and another one here and another one right there, just to really make that turn around the corner pretty good. I'm looking at my timeline, making sure that everything is winding up on 2s and that I haven't done any strange keyboard accident. All right, so here's the thing about the pixie dust. Even though we're off the screen right now, I still need to continue this for a bunch of frames because the pixie dust is going to trail behind it for a good 12, 14, 16 frames. So just to remind yourself, that is happening, have this little center of the orb continue out off the screen, even though you're not going to see it, but you'll see the pixie dust that it leaves behind. So copy, paste, copy, paste. And right about there, you can probably stop. All right, so let's take a look at what our animation looks like. In Toon Boom, if we had Shift M, it goes all the way back to the center of the screen. We've got a nice 16 hold frame of nothing at the beginning, which is essential. We've got everything on 2s except this last frame. So I'm just going to hit plus on the keyboard to extend it and go back to the beginning. We'll just hit play, see what this puppy looks like. All right, so it looked like I didn't make any mistakes. One of the things that I always look for here is if the copy and paste thing didn't happen accurately and that the orb, the center of the orb was jutting to the left or jutting to the right or holding for a frame because I didn't move it correctly. Let's watch it one more time and study it. Everything is moving correctly, slows down a lot, and off the screen. Okay, so this is fine, this is good. I like this little hold right here, that's fine. All right, so this is my orb layer. And I think we can probably keep that orb as part of our art. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another drawing layer on top of this. And what I want is a cloud behind it. The cloud behind it is going to, this is a traditional 2D animation way of working. It's going to be, I see someone's in my chat area. I don't know what that means. All right, so what do I want to call this? So I want to call this cloud or mist. I think I'm going to call it cloud because that's kind of what it is. It's a cloud of pixie dust that's going to be trailing behind it. All right, so on this first frame right here, I'm going to see that my orb, the center of the orb is coming in right here. Now I'm going to use my brush. And in the brush tools, I'm going to look and see what I've got just in terms of options. So I want a dust brush. I want like a chalk. I want an airbrush. I want something that is like a pastel or this soft pastel or this dusty pastel is good. And this is another reason for using Toon Boom. Because there's just lots of selections here. In this brush size here, I've got it set at 84 pixels. I'm going to, before I do anything, I called this my cloud layer. So now I'm going to give myself a cloud color. And again, remember, please, one of the great reasons for using Toon Boom is that I can adjust this cloud, quote unquote cloud, at any time very quickly. So I'm going to give this just a little light blue color here and put this away. All right, so now let's see what this looks like. I got an 84 pixel brush. And so, you know, that's okay right there. It's not so bad. I'm going to Z this out. Let's take a look at what it looks like. You know, it's okay. That was a gentle pressure. I push harder, no, that's okay. So I can calculate that if I draw a little, just a series of scratches behind the direction of the orb, that I can be able to control this. So I think I like this. I could even make it just a little bigger, could make it maybe 88. 88 so that I can just remember what that brush size. Oops, I'm drawing black. That was weird. All right, so I think I Z'd out of my cloud color. So I need to remake my cloud color. I hit Command Z too much. All right, cloud, pick, put away 88. test. That's fine. This is one thing that you can do in Toon Boom that you can't do in a lot of other applications or any other applications, is you can control the opacity of this with nodes. So you'll see that what we've got here is a whole bunch of nodes working, but let's get the cloud working first before we put any nodes on it. All right, so what I'm going to do is just on this layer, I'm just going to draw a little blue thing just to start. Now that I've got this orb locked in and working, I can do a couple of things. One of the things I can do is just go 2 frames out with my greater than and less than sign and just draw. And I'm just going to draw one little bit right there just to establish the keyframe. And then I'm going to go to the next one and just draw just a little bit. Go to the next one and draw just a little bit. But on this one, this is the 4th drawing right now. You got to remember that the pixie dust has a little bit of weight to it, so it's falling. And so I'm going to go to the next one and just get a little bit to fall. Now what I'm going to do is turn my onion skin on. And you could do that here. And you can kind of see where the red used to be. So that red needs to fall in your timeline. 2 frames out, go to the next orb. And as soon as you draw the little bit of dust, you've got to get this pixie dust to fall right here. And so I'm just very lightly drawing a little bit of dust. And the thing is that the brush that we picked, you'll be able to use those as part of your pixie dust. So I'm just kind of sketching, going 2 frames out, and I'm going to sketch. So whenever you draw with Toon Boom, that red becomes excited as you draw a little bit more. So I'm just using a very light pressure, and I'm just drawing a little bit of pixie dust with my brush back and forth. Remember not to ever push too hard on your stylus. You'll blow out your wrist. All right, keep going. So 2 frames out, and as soon as you hit the pixie dust, the red has to fall. All right, so I'm just drawing a little bit. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to try to see how fast I can do this. I don't want this to look like brush lines at all. I want this to look like pixie dust. I also want it to trail, a good distance behind this. So I want this to be, if this thing was like a 1/4 of an inch, then I want the actual pixie dust to be like almost 3 inches. So we go out to this one, and I want, so this has to still be alive. This has to still be falling. So I'm just sketching in. I don't know what that was. That was weird. Hold on a second. All right, so once again, you want it to look like dust. You don't want it to look like a brush or a pencil line. All right, so I'm going to try to do this quick. Again, this dust has to fall. It's almost like you're using the side of your pencil. This dust over here can dissipate. So I want to concentrate on making this dust about 3 inches. I'm just going to get this working. All right, so now the pixie dust is falling straight down. So this stuff falls straight down. This frame, this is falling straight down. So imagine that you just dropped a bunch of sugar. It's not going to fall very quickly. The hair has some sort of resistance to it, but this is why the loop is important, because now this is going to fall straight down. Remember that you are just roughing the sketch in here. but that you should be able to keep this stuff for your final animation. So this pixie dust right here on the arc is falling straight down. This is trailing behind it. This is falling straight down. This is falling straight down like that. Falling straight down. There we go. Falling straight down. Again, coming around the corner, falling straight down, coming around the corner. So just a question to all of you using Procreate. Someone answer me while I'm doing this. Do you have the same kind of tool? The same kind of aesthetics in Procreate? Animators, anybody? All right, so remember this is trailing behind it, and then this part is falling down. So this becomes important. Trail behind it, right on the arc, and falling down. Following on the arc, and this stuff has to maintain to fall down. It's kind of interesting right here because now all these particles, all these little pixie dust can kind of come on top of each other, little curl in the tail. And then right about here, they can dissipate.
I have a question.
Yes.
I missed the first like 2 minutes of class. Do you like, how do you prefer to be addressed?
Billy.
Billy's fine? Okay.
Yeah, don't use my last name at all. It's Billy, Mr. B, Billy.
Got it. Good. To answer your question about the Procreate,
Yes.
it does have an animation feature like this where you can get an onion skin kind of effect and then see where your previous shot was. And
But what
they
about
do-
the brush tool?
Yeah, they got a bunch of brushes you can download for free if you can't find one that you like within their standard ones that they come with. But there's a lot of options already that are similar to the one you're using.
Okay.
Some of them do tend to have what you were talking about with the examples, or how you could tell that some of the dots or the dust looked kind of the same. So some of the brushes do have very similar patterns. So you kind of have to be careful with a couple of them.
Right. Well, the idea here is to get the movement working as quickly as possible. The traditional 2D effects animators would literally be working with a 2B pencil and just putting a cloud of dust behind this. And a lot of times, depending on the studio, sorry, I'm making sure I'm not making a mistake. The cloud that they're drawing with their pencil would just be like a motion test. Now, I did make a mistake here. This drawing right here is on for 1, so I have to increase the exposure. Make sure you're drawing on the right frame. And the difference between using your greater than and less than signs here is that your greater than and less than signs navigate you 1 frame at a time, but your F and G key, you will be able to go keyframe to keyframe. So understanding that what I'm doing right now is just getting my animation working, and then I'm clicking my greater than sign twice to navigate in my timeline, and reminding you all that talking and doing that at the same time is a recipe for making really wonderful mistakes. All right, so it doesn't look like, I mean, it looks like you're almost done, but you're not. So keep going. The pixie dust has to be on the arc of motion as it's moving, and then this stuff has to have gravity. It has a little bit of weight to it. So all we're doing is we're just sketching that in there. we don't know what this is going to look like yet. So hopefully our magic is already starting to happen. And you can kind of see how the one student that I accused of having an octopus got too heavy into the sketching of this part. You know, I believe she tried to just get 1, 2, 3 strokes on every frame, and it just didn't work right. So what I'm doing is I'm using lots of strokes here because I don't want to make it look like there's any line or geometrical line. I wanted to make it look like it's pixie dust, remembering that if I do this correctly, I can keep this and I won't have to turn this layer off or use it as a rough layer. I can just keep it. All right, so remember we're talking about the principle of timing and spacing. We're also talking weight. This pixie dust is very light, but it does have a tiny little bit of weight to it. As the orb leaves this pixie dust behind, it has to fall. So I'm using the red to let me know where it used to be so that I know on the next frame it's got to fall a little bit, and it's falling straight down. In Toon Boom, there's a wonderful feature where you can hit, I think it's Option Command, and make your stage rotate, which you can't. Can you do this in Procreate? Can you rotate your stage like this?
Yeah.
So, and then you can get back to it by hitting Shift M. But the problem with this would be is that you have to keep your stage level because you want the pixie dust to fall straight down. There's no wind. There's no gust of wind here. The pixie dust is just falling straight down. It's trailing on the arc of motion, and then it just falls slightly. And you'll see this is just a cloud. We haven't got any of the actual pixie dust yet. Right, anything that you drew over here has to fall. It falls just slightly and dissipates. It's magic. And here you'll see that as it gets into this little hold right here, that this will be the whole moment where you can tell if you've been doing it right. This is a nice little turnover right here. This little dust is falling. Here we come. This is falling. It's turning around. It's falling and dissipating. It's falling and dissipating. See that little shape right there? See what I'm doing, everybody? All right, so it comes off on the arc, falls and dissipates. Comes off the arc, falls and dissipates. Now it's holding. I'll make sure I'm on the right frame here. I did something wrong. See this frame right here? Minus key to get it into the right position. All right, falling 2 frames out, off on the arc and falling. Two frames out on the arc, falling, but now it's going to hold. It's moving very slowly. So this pixie dust is just going to end up being more of a straight line right underneath the orb. Right here, it's just coming off a little bit and falling. Let me move the stage up a little bit. So now it's really not falling on the arc. It's just kind of falling straight down. And this stuff has to fall straight down. Here we go. Straight down. Straight down. Now it's starting to move again. All the stuff you drew here has to fall straight down. Now it's starting to move a little faster. All this has to move straight down. There's another turnover. All of this should move straight down. All right. Keep this little curl over as long as you can get it. We didn't slow it down right here, so it's starting to speed up. And there's just a couple of more frames to draw here. Follow the arc of motion and get the dust to fall straight down. Now it starts to accelerate. And accelerate even more. And now it's zooming off the stage. And just keep doing this. So get this to fall. Go 2 frames out. Oops, I made a mistake right here. A minus on the keyboard, keep your frames in line. All right, 2 frames out. All the stuff you drew here has to fall. 2 frames out. This has to fall. I don't care where the orb is, this stuff has to fall. 2 frames out, this stuff has to fall. 2 frames out, this has to fall. All right, now when I do this now, we did not draw the orb. Now we're just drawing the dust. So this dust has to just fall off the screen. No, and right about there we can be done. All right, I'm gonna hit Shift M, go back to our first frame and play. Okay, so that looks okay to me. I can see here at the end that these frames right here did not get put on 2s. So I'm going to add a frame with my plus sign, add a frame, and add a frame. Play it one more time. All right, so we're going to do a couple of things here. First thing that I'm going to do is I want this arc layer I want it to still be there, but I only want to see it faintly. So in my arc layer, I'm just going to select this layer and I'm going to go to my node view. I'm going to see that there's a whole bunch of things in here, and I'm going to hit Command A to select all of them. And then I'm going to say, you know what? I want it to be hierarchy. I want the node view up. I'm going to say, click this, and I'm going to overlap them by 25 pixels and say, okay. And you'll see that everything we've just drawn gets moved around. Now I'm moving this around with my space bar, and I can see that all of this was selected down here. So all of these are selected. But now if I hit my arc layer, it should just say, oh, there's my arc layer right there. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the node library, and I want a transparency on this. So I'm going to drag a transparency into the node view, and I'm going to feed the arc into the transparency and feed the transparency back into the composite node. Now I'm going to line these up so I can see them, go back to the regular timeline and back to the color view. And you can see that now I've got a transparency node on the arc layer. I believe it comes in at 50% transparent, just as default. 100% transparent, you can't see it. Or actually it's 86 right now, but I like that 50 as default. So that's fine with me. Maybe, yeah, keep it at 50 or 60 or something. And I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. There we go. I'm going to close this. There we go. All right, so that's how you work with nodes in Tomb. Do you have nodes in Procreate? Anybody? Do you have?
No, I don't think so.
So this is a great tool to know how to use. We're going to use it a couple of different times this semester. All right, so now that I've got my arc kind of toned down a little bit, let's see what the dust looks like. I think it's moving okay. I also think that we need a little bit more. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my cloud layer, and I can see that I've got this like test thing right here. So I'm going to erase this. Yeah, I don't want that there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same cloud with the same brush, but I'm going to increase the brush size maybe by 50%. So I'm going to take it up to like 120. And I'm just going to look and see what I've got. And that's okay. Maybe a little bigger, a little fatter, a little wider of a brush. Just keep going with it. 140. You know, that's okay right there. So now what I can do is I can just crash through this by using just the G key. So right now I'm going to add just a little bit more right there. I'm going to go here and I'm going to add just a little bit more. The pixie dust is magic. It comes off of the orb, both on the top and on the bottom of the arc. So on each one of these frames, I'm just going to very quickly add a little bit below and a little bit above the arc of motion. Just really quickly. And I know that I've got a big fat brush, and if I push on it hard, I'm going to get something strange artistically. So I'm just being really careful about where I push my brush. I'm looking to just increase the cloud. And remember that in the days of animation 2D paper, what we've got on our stage right here would have taken an animator 4 or 5 hours to do just with pencil on paper. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of bolstering out my cloud just a little bit. And remember, I don't want it to look like a squid. I don't want anything geometric. I want magic. Oops, I went too far. Hold on. I'm just kind of getting the place where the dust, where the actual magic is going to happen. You know what? There's a problem right there. I don't know what I did. I want to get rid of this. All right, only using your F and G keys. You want to stay on the keyframes. You don't want to go, and you could accidentally add animation to a frame in between. You don't want to do that. So I'm just going to very quickly add in the little extra dust on the top and the bottom of the arc. Maybe a little bit falling. All right. So right here, it's kind of think about this as a sparkler. The orb is generating all these little bits of energy. So they're like sparking off of the orb. As I'm doing this, I want to remind everyone that at this point, we're starting to look at what the shape looks like. And we're really kind of thinking, what we've got on our screen right now is starting to actually have an aesthetic to it. It's definitely got an amorphous shape to it, but we want to make it look like pixie dust. We don't want to make it look like anything other than just pixie dust. Oops. All right, keep going here, G. Now I think this frame was an errant frame. I think that we had 2 frames right on top of each other, so I might have to adjust. All right, just a little bit on the top and bottom. Right, you can see how fast this is going. The idea of drawing very lightly is that I can go back and forth. My hand is just very lightly touching my Wacom tablet. I'm not putting a lot of pressure at all. It's like a wisp of a pressure. Hardly any pressure at all. I should be able to do this all day and not have any repetitive stress injury whatsoever. And I'm going pretty quickly. I made sure that my hand is just on the advance key, which is the G key. Oops, I don't like that little splash. It's almost like you can animate it in real time. All right, so I don't know why Toon Boom is giving me that strange little splash. Must be a hiccup in the algorithm. Oh, I got two of them right in a row. That was weird. You can see that I've got some sort of up and down and like a compound curve here. It's not just a piece of fabric. It's not a bandana. It's magic. It's electrical sparks in the air. Technically, that's what you're drawing, is electrical magic sparks in the air. And if this thing were to hold and not move at all, then the sparks would just be falling straight down. They would be falling straight down, but now that it's moving, there's a little bit of air resistance. Again, just a little bit on the top, a little bit on the bottom. All right, so in the traditional 2D animation studio, the thing that we're doing now would technically just be our rough. This would be telling the ink and paint or the assistant animators, or even the lead key assistant animators, where to actually draw the pixie dust. For us, we're gonna keep this. You know, we put some effort into this. We're just gonna keep it. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got. Save our file. See what it looks like now with just that little added bit of cloud. And I think it's good. It's just subtle enough. It's working pretty well. Good, it's working. I'm gonna do the same thing on this cloud layer. I'm gonna repeat what I did on my arc layer. I'm gonna go to the node view and my node library. I'm gonna grab a transparency and put it under the cloud. And I'm gonna remind some PC people that the way Toon Boom was designed is that you should be able to just shake this right on top of this feed, and it should just fit in, but I've never gotten it to work on the Mac. So I always have to do it manually, feed it into the transparency node, feed it into the composite. Because if you don't do that right, you'll never be able to see it. All right, so once again, go back to our color palette, go back to our timeline. And now our cloud is at 50%. Now our cloud layer is at 50%. But there's a strange thing in Toon Boom where this shows up as regular until you hit the little flower. And this is what it actually renders like. So if I'm going to say this is my render view, that's what it's going to render like. So what we're going to do is we're going to take go back to OpenGL mode right here. And I don't want this to be 100% or 50% transparent. I just want it to be maybe 30% transparent. Let's see what it looks like. Let's bump this down a little bit, just maybe 20%. And what I'm doing is dragging my mouse. Hold on a second. I'm just gonna hide, see how it's a little left and right? I'm gonna just drag this to the left. Or it's just maybe 24% transparent. Again, that's what it would render like. This is what it looks like to us. It's full. Toon Boom will not show you what it renders like in real time. All right, but that should be good enough. Let's see what it looks like, just regular animation. I think it's working pretty good. We are about ready to start our magic. And this is a good time for me to get a drink of water. Take a 5-minute break, and then I'll show you how to do your actual pixie dust. Okay, 5-minute break, please. All right, everybody. I'm back a little early because I realized I didn't pause my recording. So on YouTube, you're going to have 4 minutes of nothing. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got one more time. Orb comes in, goes around. Okay. Any questions so far? Does everyone understand how to get to this point? Millicent, okay. Rob, Dan, Sihan. Okay, so there's a couple more steps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my mouse about right there, and I'm going to turn my background color off. And I'm going to see that I've got just enough little area right here where I can draw a key. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my background layer, and with my main select tool, I'm going to select my background and just make it a little bit bigger on the left. Again, I'm going to look at this 9 and the 95 right here and turn my background off and say, yep, sure enough, I've got enough little space right here to generate a key. With my pencil, with a Pixie Dust color. So I'm going to start with this cloud. I'm going to go add another color, and this is going to be P1, Pixie Dust 1. So just P1. I'm going to make this more red so I can see it. And remember that in Toon Boom, I can change this universally in the shot anytime I want. I'm going to just give it just a little bit of red hue to it. This is my P1. All right. Over here on your key, in your Pixie Dust, is going to have several different kinds of shapes, really small dots, medium dots, a little bigger, and then open circles. You can have crosses and 6-point crosses. You can have spirals and triangles and just single straight lines if you want. Be careful of those. You can have anything you want. You can have squares. So this is the stuff that's going to be the magic that's falling behind the Pixie Dust itself. And I'm drawing it on the background layer so I can just remind myself what is happening. I can also have exploding stars. So this is an exploding 6-point star. This is an exploding 3-point star. You can have an exploding 4-point star too if you want. I usually like using the 3 or 6. You can have an exploding star that has another little exploding bit inside it. You can have a 5-point star. So this is just a start. You can have little hashtags. You can have all kinds of stuff in here, but this is just a good start. All right, that's on the background. So that's just reminding me that when I start going into my animation here, I'm going to take this cloud layer and turn it off. Now I need my Pixie Dust layer. And this is going to be P1. So I'm just going to say I want a drawing layer. It's going to be a P1. This vector, add and close. So now, oops, it's in the wrong place. So I want to put it on top of the cloud. And I want to start drawing right here. All right, so this is where you just have to use the cloud. And I'm just going to do a first pass here, just on the little articulated dots. I'm just going to do my little dots first. We've got about 25 minutes left for class. So I'm starting a new layer, so I have to use the greater than sign to go 2 frames out, and I'm just going to draw little dots. I'm just going to go all the way through this and draw little dots, keeping in mind that what was happening was that we used our cloud to determine where these dots should be. I'm randomizing them. I'm going back and forth and left and right. I can even have little Pixie Dust dots in front of the orb. All right, so once again, we're using the cloud to dictate where these little dots are going to go. You get yourself into a rhythm here. There can be pixie dust in front of the orb, and behind it, you're using the cloud to generate where these little magical pixie dots should be. Pixie dots. All right, I'm going to continue here. And there is a rule. The rule is, do not draw any of these little pixie dust dots, these little pixie dots, in exactly the same place as the frame before it. It's magic. It's supposed to twinkle. So you don't want them to fall and make it look like they're just confetti, although you can think confetti, but a lot of times in animation, you want to think about what your character is doing and thinking as you're animating. So for this pixie dust, it's magic. It's not really sparks. It's more like magic. Just think magic. And it's falling. So each one of these little dots, and I'm doing the little dots first, and you can see from some of the examples that we showed in the beginning that it does take a couple hours to get through all of these passes. I don't know if I'm going to get through this whole timeline in 20 minutes. This would take me a couple hours, but at least I want to do a bunch so that you can see what to expect. This is not due next week. Rob, this is not due next week. This is a 2-week project. Millicent, you okay?
Yes, I'm good.
This is not due next week. I want to see what you're working on. So I put a folder there so I can help you. But the final for this is not due next week.
Got it. Thanks.
All right, so once again, I'm training my hand to go back and forth. You want a random placement. You don't want any of these dots, any of these pixie dots to be in the same place. So I'm just going through my animation left and right, and I'm paying attention where the dots were. Eventually, you're going to want a whole bunch of these. If you do this right, the cloud carries the magic, but these little pixie dots are the thing that is actually the magic. So right now we're on like frame 40 something. Sometimes if my mouse drags, my stylus drags and makes a little line, I'll turn it into a 6-point star. And right now I'm also establishing frames. So I've got my hand on the greater than sign, and I'm going back and forth and left and right. And I'm just establishing the keyframes by doing this. So I'm going left and right and up and down. Hopefully you do this right. You don't have to erase anything. What you're looking at is actually doing final animation as you're doing it. Keeping in mind that you have to study what the cloud told you. The cloud is telling you that the pixie dust is generating from that place. All right, so I'm just doing a bunch of them. You would probably want 8 times more than what I'm drawing right now. I'm trying to go quickly so that you can kind of see what this turns into. All right, I always do the little ones. I just do a little bit of the little ones first. I just get them working. And again, I'm using my pencil tool on this, not the paintbrush. So I'm getting a very vector line. 2 frames out. All right, so we're about 60 frames. Let's see what we've got. I'm just going to keep the camera right there and play this. All right, so I need quite a bit more. It's working okay, but I need quite a bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at this first frame and let's do like bigger dots and open circles. I'm going to zoom into this just a little bit. So I'm going to do two things at once. Three things at once. I'm going to add a couple more pixie dots. And then when I can see it, when the aesthetic calls for it, I might add a little open circle. Now be careful because when you do that, that circle has to fall. All right, so once again, there could be little dots in front. And now I can use, I'm gonna just use my G key to make sure that I go to the correct frame because I don't want to draw on the on twos frame. All right, so that little dot right there is starting to fall. I want to make sure that this dot is actually on the screen in my thing. I'm going to turn my, so it's not there. So this little dot is not animating. I don't have to worry about it. So it's off the stage. So right now I'm just going to, there has to be a little bit more back here. Again, back and forth, randomize. You're going to need a lot of these little dots. All right, G key to go to the next keyframe. And right about here, we're going to draw an open circle. All right, we're going to go to the next keyframe, drop that open circle down first. Fill in a little bit more, oops, cross that line. Open, oops, I went too far. All right, so this circle's falling. And you can see I turned it into a little curlicue, that's fine. The little pixie dots can be outside the cloud. That's fine. That's good. You want pixie dust to come up above the arc of motion and below the arc of motion. Maybe a few are in front. Next keyframe. So this little circle here can just pop. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a 5-point star. And you'll see here that on the next keyframe, I'm going to take this 5-point star and drop it down just a little bit. And I'm going to expand that 5-point star. I'm going to make it big and give myself some little pixie dots in here. Again, I don't want to drag my mouse. I don't want too many straight lines. The square is fine. The little cross is fine, but not too much. All right, so now the 5-point star here is exploding on top of itself. It stopped moving down. So I'm just going to get those lines to radiate from that point. Next keyframe, radiate from that point. We're on twos at 24 FPS. So that's about 1/4 of an inch. Pixie dust. Continue it out and start dissipating the end of it. And you can count. You're probably going to need 6 of those to read correctly. 6 drawings of that exploding 5-point star is a 1/2 second because you're on 2. So that's total of 12 frames. So now they're just becoming little dots. And you might need 1 more. All right, 1 more keyframe and just little dots. You don't want them to end all on the same frame. Maybe just these 3. And let's see what that looks like. All right, see it? Let's take 1 more look at it. Okay, good. So that is the process. Let's go back and look at our orb here for just a second. I don't like this just being blue like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an orb 2 color. And I'm going to take this color, I'm going to, in Toon Boom, you can move your swatches around. So I'm going to put it underneath the orb 1. I'm going to double click. And I'm going to say this is orb 2. And I'm gonna make it quite a bit more yellow. We'll just leave it there. We can always change it later. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to paint the interior of the orb really quickly. In Toon Boom, there's like tons of different paint tools. So I'm gonna just paint regular. I'm on my orb layer, I'm gonna paint. And so that becomes yellow right there. And I think it's a little bright. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna double click on this and I'm gonna give it an alpha. I don't know if you can do this in TV Paint or Procreate, but I'm gonna give it just a transparency of something about like right there. And I'm gonna just paint all the orbs really quickly. So on here, oops, I'm gonna put this away. I got my paint tool and I'm just gonna paint all the orbs. Go to the next keyframe, paint. Next keyframe, paint. Now I could have done this while I was creating the orb, but this happens fast enough that it doesn't matter. I think that if you were copying and pasting your orb, you were happy with the look of it, it doesn't matter. There is a strange thing in Toon Boom where I'm actually dragging my stylus. I'm not just clicking because it's a vector. And if I don't drag while I'm painting, I can leave little open spaces, little open vector spaces. So this gives it a nice little bright, that's the one that is strange. The orb does not have to be spinning. The orb does not have to be rotating. In fact, that might be weird. It might be distracting. In fact, if you were to try to get this little orb bit to spin, you might not see it because the thing in animation is that the rule is your eye sees the thing that's moving the fastest. So if the cloud is there, you won't see it. All right, so I've painted it. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. Save our file. Now we see what that little yellow looks like. It's okay. You know, that works. All right, so that's starting to work pretty well. Let's go back to our first orb. And one of the things that you can do here is maybe give it a different appeal. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to create an orb 3. Oops, not 23.3. And I'm going to close. I'm going to make this like, I see I got blue and yellow, so I'm going to maybe add maybe a little green to it. I'm looking at my aesthetic. A little green might be just fine. I might give it, so it's taking on an alpha already in Toon Boom. If you see that little line across the color, that means that there's an alpha that's been applied to it. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my paintbrush, and it's still stuck on this color or this style of brush here. On my orb 1 layer, I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit. I'm sorry, just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm painting just a little bit of green. I think that's fine. I'm going to go to the next keyframe, and I'm just going to just touch it, just with a little bit of green. You'll be able to see this. Maybe my brush is a little too big. And I'm going to just give that orb just like a little magical strange. And this is something to think about, because if you do this manually, it'll shimmer a little bit rather than painting and creating an orb and then copying and pasting the final orb. you will see this. Your eye will pick up on the idea that there's a little shimmer happening inside the orb itself. It's a good idea. You can do all kinds of things artistically. This isn't the only thing you have to do, but it's a good option. One of the things that you can think about is oops, hold on. Are there sparks? Are there little radial bits coming off of the orb itself? I don't recommend trying something highly experimental as painting every other one. That would be weird. You can see that when I'm doing this, the brush is actually overspilling the orb itself a little bit. That's fine, but that's good. What we're looking at is creating magic. We're creating an effect. I'm using the brush in different directions, and it should give some sort of shimmer effect just all by itself. And you see that this part goes pretty quickly. And as soon as it goes off the stage, you don't need to paint any more than that. Let's hit Shift M and save and see what this looks like. All right, so what we're looking at now is we want to see if we can pick up on just a little shimmering green inside the orb. It's there. You know, you could do all kinds of things with it. All right, so that's working pretty well. Our job right here is to keep working on that pixie dust. So we were in P1 with our pencil, and let's just take one more look at it here. And I think it's working pretty well. Again, this is due in 2 weeks. So I want to see what your QuickTime movies look like. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to go File. We're going to go to Export a movie. I do not want a GIF. I do not want a SWIFT. I do not want OpenGeo. I want a movie. When it does this, it's going to output it to the desktop in the Steam folder. That's not what I want. It's probably the last thing I did. So I want to save this as Billy B _ Pixie Dust version 1. It's going to come to the desktop as a .move and say save. It's going to do all the frames. That's fine. It's 1280 by 720. I'm going to say okay. And I got my movie. Let me go take a look at it. So the movie did not wind up inside this folder. Just a word of caution for all of you animators. Never, ever, ever in a million years, for the long as you're alive, never change the name of anything inside this folder, especially in the environments, palettes, frames, or jobs folders. You'll be, Toon Boom will freak out on you. Never, ever change these names. All right, so let's take a look at our movie, because we've looked at it as the QuickTime or the Toon Boom was playing it, but let's see what our movie looks like. All right, so what we see is that little cloud bit that we animated is actually really bright. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this away, and I'm going to actually throw this movie away. I don't want it. I'm going to go back here and oops, and I'm going to say, what were we doing with this cloud? Let's analyze our cloud. Our cloud right here has a transparency node on it, a 24% transparency. I think that that's fine, but let's make it just a little bit more transparent, maybe 30 or something like that. Oh, but we don't want to do this. This is a great mistake to make. We don't want to keyframe it from some random place. So let's zero this out. And I don't know what this keyframe is doing here, so we're gonna delete this keyframe, and that's good. All right, so we're gonna put our cursor, we can put our cursor anywhere, I believe. And we're gonna just say, let's take the transparency. Oh, it was at 30. So we were taking it at 24. Let's go, I think that's fine. But let's just save this and see what the movie looks like again. All right, it's going to the desktop. It's still version 1 because we threw the other one away. So say okay. It's rendering. All right, so what we were trying to do is get that cloud to be a little bit more transparent. So it's a little bit more transparent. I think it's still just hanging out there too bright in my eyes. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to hit the cloud layer here just to select it. And we're going to go to the node view. We can see that the cloud is here, that the transparency is here for sure. But we're going to put a blur on it. So I'm going to take in my node view, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to put a blur on it. And again, in PCs, you should be able to shake this. But here we're just going to feed the cloud into the blur and the blur into the transparency. Go back to our color palette. Go back to our timeline. Now you see that we've got the blur, and the blur is set at 0. And so with our render mode on and zoomed in a little bit, we're going to see what happens if we take the blurry up to 1.9. We're going to say save. We're going to go back to our desktop, throw this movie away. Oops, no, open. Throw this movie away and render it again. All the things are the same, say okay. And I'm doing this step repeatedly because what's important is this QuickTime movie. We want to see what it actually renders like. And so like, I don't even need to see the animation. It's still too bright. It's still too bright. So I'm going to put this away. I'm going to throw it away again. And I think I'm going to go to my transparency node. Remember that 100% transparency is gone. So I'm going to take my transparency up to 44. Hit say, oh, I don't want this keyframe here. This is weird. So I'm going to put my cursor here. Take the transparency up to 44, 48, something like that. Say save, render it again. All the same, it's just going to show up here on the desktop. All right, once again, I want short file names, no spaces in your file names. No spaces, capitals mean something. You should never, ever have a space in your file name. All right, so now even with 44% transparency, I think it's still just a little too bright. It's still just a little too bright. I think I want to kill it just a little more. So I'm going to throw this one away. I'm going to go back to the transparency node and just up it maybe to 60. And in our node view, you can barely see it, but what matters is how it renders. So let's do this one more time. And let's just pick a frame. I think it's starting to look good. That's okay. Let's see what the little pixie dust looked like on top of it. And that looks okay. So if you're using Toon Boom, 60%, 65% transparency is okay. I'm going to throw this one away because I'm actually going to keep working on this. I'm going to close this blur and close the transparency. I don't know if you have that option in Procreate. Do you have the ability to control these kind of things in Procreate? Go ahead, Millicent.
Would you mind repeating that one more time? What things?
Your microphone is not picking up all your words. Try it again. Go ahead.
Mind repeating that one more time?
Yes, please. Oh, I didn't hear you. Do you have the ability to control transparency or blur or glow in Procreate?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so what I would like is a movie that's very similar, a QuickTime movie that's very similar to this for next week. I think that I've given you a really good start. Create a nice arc. You should have one arc that loops over. You can have a crossover the other way. If you do a loop up, then do a loop down. Try to have a place where it's holding. Get your orb working, get the timing working. Make sure you're at 24 FPS. Your cloud that you're drawing is just to guide the pixie dust. And I only did 1/8, 1/10 of the pixie dust here. In these frames right here, it's starting to look pretty good. You can put a couple of exploding stars in there. Remember that, I don't know if your ability to change color along the entire timeline in Procreate, like you can do in Toon Boom. But the idea would be, if you can't, then make sure your aesthetics are working first. Make sure your aesthetics are working first. For next week, you can either leave the arc like this as just a very light arc, or you can turn it off and just leave the animation so we can look at it and evaluate it. That's the best. You're self-evaluating timing and spacing. Remember that I do not want QuickTime folders. I want QuickTime movies, and that your QuickTime movies, they should be named like this, just your initials _ PD for Pixie Dust, so I can see it. Like this is a good one, version 2, that's a good name, MF _ PD version 2 MP4. MP4 is a QuickTime movie. It's in the same family. And then this will be due in 2 weeks. If you're doing this right, it should look easy. If you're doing this right, it should be fun. And you have lots of little dots to draw, just tons of little dots. But you want to make sure that those little pixie dots, those little pixie dust dots are in the right place. And the only way you can do that is make sure the cloud is working. The cloud has to be moving behind the arc, behind the orb, and falling. So make sure that that's working first. And then that guides you to where the little pixie dust is. Use your key to do small, medium, and large pixie dust circles. You see that exploding star that I did? And if everything goes as planned, then all you have to do to get this thing done is just put your headphones on, turn some cool music on, and draw tons of pixie dust. Right? So this is due in 2 weeks. This movie will be up in the classroom in a couple hours, but I do record these and put them up in the classroom so you can go back to it. Once you do that, you'll see that you can see my channel, and there's nothing, I don't have any like personal family movies in there. It's just all teaching stuff. And so you can go through the last 2 years of Pixie Dust demos and all the other stuff that I have on there. You don't have to look at all of it if you want to, but this one will be up in a couple hours. Do you have any questions before I sign you off? All right, the idea is magic. Magic.
I actually I had a suggestion for everybody that's using an iPad or trying to use Procreate. The animation part of it gets a little tricky because you can't really use too many layers on top of each other, I guess, and like you can in Flash. But I use CaliPeg. CaliPeg is for the iPad. It's like $5, I think. It's one of the best softwares I've ever used for the iPad. It works exactly like Flash.
Do you want to put that in? Could you put that in the chat?
Yeah, I can do that.
And then I'll sign you off. Javon, I see your note. Javon, are you there? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I
Okay,
just had
remember that
some call dropping. The call kept dropping when I tried to join earlier.
Right. Well, you'll get your attendance for today, but remember that the Academy wants you on camera with your microphone for the whole class.
Okay, no problem.
And you should know that. You know,
Yeah.
Other teachers are probably being more militant about it than me.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll wait for Rob to post that little thing in the chat, and then I'll give you a chance to click on it. And then I'll send you off onto your Friday afternoon.
Having your technical difficulties. I can't have my camera plugged in at the same time as my keyboard.
Well, you know what you could do?
So I have to switch them. It's just Cali is in California, like C-A-L-I, and then peg, like a peg in Harmony.
Like this, K-A-L-I-P-E-G, like that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly, but not a V and no period or no dot. But it's worth checking out if you're used to using Adobe Animate or Flash.
Is it a plugin or an extension?
It's its own software. It's standalone. The only thing that makes it, I would say, a little more difficult than using a mouse and keyboard is the fact there are a lot of like options you have to learn how to use with your hands, like in Procreate. So if you kind of understand how to do that and get past that, then it works perfectly. It works fine.
All right. Well, it's an option for you all. All right. If you need me, use Billy B at Yahoo_44@yahoo.com. And again, the Pixie Dust project here is due in 2 weeks. Start thinking about your volcano. You see the JPEG that I put in there, look at it, start thinking about what you want to do for your tornado. Look at the Pinterest site just to get ideas. Start sketching out thumbnails, tons of thumbnails. What do you want to do for your final? Start thinking about that now, so that when we do the water splash, you can say, oh, I'm going to do the water splash at this size so I can put it in my final. It's not too early to start thinking about combining all these into just 4 projects. This is the international nonverbal gesture for 4 projects. All right, I will see you next week, everybody.
Cool. Thanks, Billy.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.